All right, everyone. Welcome to Be the Market Expert. And so let's kick this thing off. I think the theme of the 2026 is truly going to be affordability. All right. Whether we are talking about NAR and fighting for affordability and 1031 exchanges, we're going to see stuff from Congress people running on platforms. We here is the president. Affordability, right? We talk about the American dream, and the American dream is not dead. The American dream is still to own real estate. It's just that we have an affordability issue. Multiple reasons, right? When we look at this, we have constraint in inventory, and I get it, right? Everyone's like, "What?" But there's houses on the market. Yeah, there's absolutely houses on the market. No one's going to contest that. And yet, there's houses on the market, and when we live in Colorado, right? Because we are all very fortunate on this phone call, and we have a price point in the Denver metro of $600,000. You couple that with a 6% interest rate, we have an affordability issue. Even so much if we were to look at the condo market. And so let's just talk about the condo market for a quick minute here. We talk about the condo market, and you would think that the condo market is for those parents or those people that are transitioning out of their parents' basements, millennials, I'm talking to you, and you get out of your parents' basement, and you go into a condo. Well, even with the condos at a $350,000, $400,000 price tag, and they have a $500 HOA, we have an affordability issue. So, what I think we're going to see going through the rest of this year and probably for the rest of our lives is we're going to talk about affordability. Now, the articles that I have pulled up, these are all very, very recent articles, and a lot of them are going to talk about affordability. Then we're going to go into what's happening, and I'm pretty excited about what's happening. So, Trump heads to Davos. If anyone's like, where's Davos? I'm not talking about Game of Thrones, but what we are talking about is Switzerland. All right. So he's going to the economic summit. And when we go through this is one of the things that the president is talking about right now. And it is to improve housing affordability. So, what we do understand is that the president came out and floated this 50-year mortgage, and everyone was like, hold the phone. 50-year mortgage, that just means that we are renting for 50 years. I saw this thing the other day, this infographic, and the infographic actually pointed to a $400,000 price point, right? The median price point for the United States. And it was something like that loan over 50 years would be like $1.2 million. So let's just say that you are one of those outliers that actually truly lives in the home for the entirety of those 50 years. That would be $1.2 million for a 50-year loan product, because we understand that the first front loaded part of that's only interest. So we scrapped that. I say we, like I had any decision in this, but that fell off the table. So now some things are being floated, right? And so a couple of them are mortgage-backed securities, and we saw this, and I think it was like $20 billion was purchased a couple of weeks ago, and we saw that the rates started trickling down a little bit. There's also this thing around institutional investors. Now, here's the deal. There's institutional investors. I don't know what that caps at. I don't know if an institutional investor is 100 person or 100 house, 100 door product. I don't know if it's 1,000 door product. I don't know if it's an 80,000 door product, because guys, those are all very real. Like, all of those live out there. And so one of the conversations is banning all institutional investors from acquiring single family homes. Okay. I don't know what that looks like. There's another one that's talking about 401k penalty free. And I know that we talked about this a little bit last week, and some hands went up and was like, hey, we already have that. And yes, and currently right now what there is there's a couple examples. And one of the examples is up to $50,000. Well, up to $50,000, if you're talking about 20% down, we're not buying a home in Colorado, everyone. So we'll look at that, right? So $50,000 is not a viable option for a lot of these homes right now at 20% down. Then there wouldn't be taxes. There's no 10% penalty, but your repayment on that's over 5 years. So you have 5 years on top of your mortgage to do interest back payments back to your 401k. And that's kind of what this looks like now. So I don't know what this one looks like, but I know a lot of people are like, we already have that. Well, we have a version of it, and obviously that version is not working. So they're redrawing that thing back up. Now, here's the deal. The 401k, because we're talking about taxes and what is the government like, tax money. And we're also talking about institutional investors. This is going to have to go through Senate. This is going to have to go through Congress. These are going to have to, this is not auto pen. All right. Like this is not just a let's sign this thing because whatever can be done with the pen can be undone by the pen. And so this will have to go through. But yet, this is some of the things that we already know is going to be on the board. And so it's going to be very, very interesting when they go through and we're going to see kind of what happens. But again, this is what we're going to see over and over and over again. So let's kind of fast forward a little bit. Here's your second article. And again, these are all very, very close to one another. Affordability forecast indicates small wins year for housing. All right. So it's saying 49 of the 50 largest US markets will be seeing cost ease in 2026, and 20 will meet a key affordability threshold. All right. So let's look at this. This is what I was talking about. When we talk about down payment, right? Down payments and issue, I just told you that the current 401k rules is up to $50,000. Well, check this out, guys. When we look at this as a typical home, when you look at this for $359,078, 20% down payment, talking about $71,800. So that $50,000 doesn't do anything for anybody. All right. So when we're looking at this, we have a real issue. So they need to retool some of these things. And a lot of these things that are in place right now haven't been updated, since before the 90s. And so they're going to have to go through, they're going to have to retool a lot of stuff that we're using for these products because we have an affordability issue. And every American can get behind that. I don't care if this is Republican, Democrat, Independent, whoever. We can all agree that there is an affordability issue in the United States and it needs to be addressed. So we go through and we look at this a little bit more, and it says by the end of 2026, Zillow, and Zillow, we can rely on some of this information from Zillow because they are indexing a lot of info, right? They're pulling every listing into its platform. They're going through, they're extrapolating the data. They're seeing when homes are selling, when they're going under contract, price decreases. They're getting all of this. So this is a pretty good source for at least this kind of info. And it says by the end of 2026, Zillow predicts that mortgage costs nationwide will require 32%. So here we go. This is an affordability issue. 32% of the income for a median household. That's what's going to go to housing. All right. So when we're talking 32% of your take home money is going to real estate only. Let's talk about $100,000, which we know that in Colorado, we do not have people moving into Colorado currently that are not at least at $100,000. They can't afford a Colorado at that point. Now, I get that there's people that already live in Colorado that are making less than 100K, but you're not seeing people move in that make less than 100K at this point, unless they're moving in with family and some other stuff. So out of $100,000, we're talking about $32,000 is going to housing. 32,000, 1/3 of their income is going directly to housing. And that's just median, right? And we know that we're not in the median because our price point is 600,000. So we obviously know that this is more in Colorado. This is an issue. All right. So as we're going through, it says, what can we expect, right? There's some expecting. So where will affordability improve the most? Well, they're going through and they're saying the Midwest. And we understand this, right? When we look and we start talking about where people go when they get outpriced from California, Colorado, Texas, Florida, maybe, probably not. But what that looks like is they go to the Midwest. They start going to these other states where there's much better affordability. There's more affordability in these areas. And that's where people will start transplanting to once they start getting priced out more and more and more. Well, some of the things that are pricing people out, right? We have tighter inventory, new builds, right? There's not enough land to build. And so we have an affordability issue because of lack of inventory, higher interest rates. We live in Colorado, so we have wildfires, we have hail. So what we're seeing is that we are seeing our insurances going up, taxes are going up. All of these things that are coupling together is making the American dream harder and harder and harder to accomplish. And so we need our Congress people, We need our government to go through and figure out what can we do to be able to cool the cost of money down, because that's all we can do. How can we make money more readily available? Because again, inflation is what we are seeing. We are seeing the cost of goods go up as a threat to democracy. All right. And what I mean by that is this: you have the upper class, you have a middle class, and you have a lower class. All right. And so what happens is when we start seeing the cost of goods going up, well, the affluent, it doesn't impact them. So what you do is you start seeing this middle class. And so you see how the upper echelons of the middle class, they might get pulled up with the upper class. The lower part of the middle class is going to get pulled down to the little class, and you have this bigger and bigger discrepancy between upper class and lower class. And I say that, and that's pretty crude, but that's what it is, right? We talk about the fluent and less affluent, if you will. And there's this the bigger disparagement between the two, and the middle class just disappears. All right. This section is not a full middle class. It just means people got pulled up or they got pulled down. All right. And that's what this looks like. So we need to constantly be going through and figuring out what can we do to make affordability easier. And this is what I would challenge everyone on this call, is that we know that we have mechanisms inside of our contracting agreements right now to be able to help with some of these affordability issues. So while we're going through and we're figuring out, okay, what can we do with 401ks, or what can we do as far as bridge loans or whatever that may look like, roll over to IRAs, right? IRA is a little bit different, but IRA even, I think, is like a $10,000 limit. Also not helpful. So then when we go in and we look at these things, we know about concessions. We understand that in the Denver metro area, we have about a $15,000 cushion where we're seeing most sellers willing to give a $15,000 concession right up front in the beginning of the negotiation periods. We couple that with our lenders. And so this is my challenge to everyone: is go partner with your lender partners and figure out what programs they have going on right now. Figure out what new build incentives are happening right now to drop the affordability down. What you're seeing is your consumers don't know what they can and can't afford because they're getting their information from CNN, from Fox, from YouTube, from X, from insert whatever here. And you know what they get clicked on? Fear. Fear-based stuff sells. And so we need to be that real estate economist of choice, making sure that we have our resource partners to be able to figure out what we have going on to educate our people so they understand that the American dream is not dead. And while it looks unachievable, we actually have mechanisms that we can pull to lower your rates down, to make things more affordable, to get you into home ownership. Because what we also understand is this: homes appreciate. Since the 1990s, there's only been 3 years where, as a whole, we have seen negative appreciation. And what we also understand that during that timeline, if we were to go from 1990s to today, and if we were to put it on just an axis, we would see 4% appreciation year over year, even with that 3-year dip. Home ownership creates wealth in our society, and you guys are the keys for this. But let's talk about wealth. Gen X and millennials set to inherit trillions in real estate wealth. All right, guys. So as we're going through and we're doing this, let's talk about the greatest wealth transfer of our lives. It is happening, and it is going to continue to happen. What we are seeing is we are seeing this baby boomer generation and even the silent generation owns real estate. This real estate was bought with what, like 2 buttons and some lint. And these guys have held on to these assets, and these assets have appreciated. All right. So they've appreciated. I can tell you that when we look at this and we look at some of the things that have been bought in the 90s in Colorado specifically, we have some $300,000 homes that were purchased in the 90s that are worth north of $1 million right now. And what we are not seeing currently in our environment is people downsizing and right sizing. They are holding onto their properties because it does not make sense. Historically speaking, if we were to go back into the 50s, what we would see is people would get into their starter home, right? They would, historically speaking, get married, move into a condo, move into a small home, have babies, outgrow that home, move into a bigger home. Then the kids go off to college, they get married, And then the parents get into a smaller home, and it's just this cycle of what people are buying and selling real estate. Well, we understand this has slowed down tremendously because it doesn't make sense to right size anymore because my home's paid off. I got tremendous equity in it, and I'm going to live in this home. So, what they're saying now is we're going to see these people live in these homes. They are going to pass away in these homes, and their children are going to inherit these homes. And so, guys, we understand that real estate is a long term play. All right. So, we need to be getting into as many relationships as we can. It says that in Coldwell Banker's Global Luxury Trend Report that they went through and they said Gen X and millennials are expected to inherit about $4.6 trillion in real estate wealth. Guys, that's just real estate. That's not including the businesses, the paintings, the physical assets, all those things. This is just real estate. It says findings show that 52% of the projected property wealth transfers will take place in the US alone. And again, this is coming from the baby boomer generation. All right. So the baby boomer generation, you're going to see 52% of the 4.6 trillion. So if anyone just did the Rain Man math, $2.3 trillion in real estate, right, is going to be transferred to your friends and your friends' families over the next few years. All right. So that's when we need to go through and we need to make sure that we're having those conversations. Do you have the wealth planners, the CPAs, the people that you have relationships with to help your people protect those assets? Because you don't know if they're going to turn into rentals. You don't know if they're going to sell their primary and move into some of these homes. You do not know what's going on, but we need to be in relationship with these people so they understand that we are the real estate economists of choice for when this does happen. They are thinking about us and we can navigate this process. All right. So as we're going through, it says US is positioned as the primary beneficiary. And we just saw this. It says that $2.4 trillion in domestic real estate over the next 10 years. And so I don't know about you guys, but I don't plan on getting out of real estate in the next 10 years. And so I guess if you are, don't listen to this. Like this is not you. Don't worry about it. But if you plan on being a real estate agent, this is very, very important to you. The people that you're in relationship now, while they might have some affordability issues, they were about to inherit a piece of this $2 trillion. And you, as the real estate economist of choice, are going to help them. So the individuals with net worth between 5 billion and 300 million are projected to drive nearly 2/3 of that. Okay, so 2/3 are going to live in that demographic of the 5 million plus net worth individuals. So then we just have 1/3 left for the less than the $5 million net worth. Since 2020, investments in US luxury real estate among buyers with more than 5 million in net worth has increased nearly 60%. And so if you guys are looking at this and you're like, well, gosh, that seems like a lot. I want you guys to think again, these people that sat on these homes, they bought these homes in the 1990s or in 2008, right? 2008, when we were seeing these houses going to foreclosures. And literally, guys, what was happening was people were knocking on the door saying, hey, I notice that you're in foreclosure. How about you sign the deed over to me and I will give you $10,000 and help you move? Guys, literally, this is how we were seeing people become millionaires over the next couple decades. Was they were literally going through, they were giving people $10,000 in cash to walk away from their houses, plus giving them moving expenses, and they were taking over their houses and turning them into rentals. And so when we look at this number and we think about $5 million, some of you might be taken back by that and say, oh my goodness, that's a lot of money. I don't have those people in my world. You might, right? Like this is, in the grand scheme of things, this is not a lot of money depending on how they position themselves in the earlier years. So let's go through and let's talk about Logan Motor Xiaomi. Let's talk about some national news. All right. So again, this is rear view facing data. This data came out on Friday. And when we look at this, it says the housing market in 2026 is off and going. Mortgage rates near 6% and mortgage spreads near normal levels. We're not going to talk about mortgage spreads. It says we had solid data. So let's look at mortgage purchase application data. Guys, this is exciting. All right. Let's see what we're looking at. We're looking at 2025. What do we know what happened for those who were on the call last year is that we saw 2025 outpaced 2024. Guys, we had double digit growth from 2025 January week 1 to week 1 of January 2026, and we're still outpacing it. Guys, what this says is this says that there are buyers that are in your ecosystems right now that have raised their hands to talk to lenders to figure out what they qualify for. Now, I get it. There are refinance conversations that are happening in this information. Absolutely. Okay. There is information that is happening where you have sellers, or I'm sorry, homeowners that own property that are at 7% interest rates, 8% interest rates. Those are very real. And they are reaching out to lenders to see if they can get down to 6%, because 6% would take it would feel better. It would be a good space for them to be in. And yet what this is also saying is people realize that they've been waiting on the sidelines. I want you guys to keep in mind, CNN, Fox, Twitter, YouTube have been pushing that interest rates are going to fall. The housing crash is coming. The Airbnb bust is on the horizon. The silver tsunami wave is rolling in. And none of this has come to fruition over the last 4 years since they've been calling for it. They've been calling for this since 2022, and none of it has happened. So now what do we have? We have buyer fatigue. We have buyers that have been sitting on the fence waiting because these outside sources that have been taking so much mind share from them have been telling them it's on its way. Just hold out. Just hold out. Just hold out. And they realize I've held out long enough, and home prices are just getting more and more expensive. Yeah, they've stalled a little bit, but nothing is crashing. And so what we need to do is we need to reach out to our people. This is telling me right now that people are saying 6% is a good number. 6% isn't 3%, but 3% isn't ever coming again. All right, everyone. So we need to go through and we need to have conversations with our people, because this is telling me that more and more people are talking to lenders. And guess what? If it wasn't your lender that they talked to, that lender probably has a referring agent that they give their business to. And what you're going to do is you're going to get a text message one day. And that text message is going to say, hey, how are things going? And you're going to say, great. And they're going to say, hey, I'm having a barbecue over at my new house. Do you want to come check it out? Would love to have you. And you're going to say, new house? When did that happen? Well, I talked to a lender, and that lender referred a great real estate agent. I didn't know if you were available. Guys, we need to go out and we need to have conversations with our people. All right. There's nothing worse than that feeling. I promise you guys, it happens. Weekly pending, guys, we're looking at this thing and we're on the up and up, guys. Seasonality, while it is real, and we are seasonality again, what we're also seeing is more people are making moves when it makes more sense for them. It has nothing to do with jack-o'-lanterns and Easter bunnies anymore. It has everything to do with the cost of money and the motivations. All right. So I don't want you guys to think, yes, we do get a little bit slower in these months. And yet, here's the deal. People are not waiting for the spring and the summer months anymore. They're waiting for the right home to come online that fits their needs, because, again, affordability. They're not waiting for a season. They're saying this home matches my criteria. What we do know is we've seen an increase of people that are looking for their forever home. Does this home check multiple check boxes? Because I don't want to have to go out and buy another home 4 years down the road at another 6% interest rate and putting 20% down. So they're looking longer to make sure that the home hits their criteria. All right. That's why we need to be in constant communications with people, because they probably talk to the lender and now they're just on Zillow and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting. And then the perfect home pops up and they go. All right. Again, we're not going to talk about 10-year yield. We're not going to talk about the mortgage spreads. But when we go here, here's your single family inventory. Guys, this is the good news. We saw a little bit of dip starting to pop back up, and that's what we do see. All right. We see more and more homes start coming on the market. What we also know is, historically speaking, sellers become buyers. So these sellers, what they're going to do is, as they're selling their home, they're going to also buy a home. So it's going to be one for one. But what we also are going to see is we are going to see these millennials and Gen Z buyers, because yes, Gen Zs are starting to buy houses now. They're going to take inventory directly off the board. They're not selling a house, so they're not putting inventory back on, but they are going to take inventory off the board when they buy. So while we are seeing more and more inventory, what we will see is we will see more price corrections, and it will hold each other accountable, because the people that are listing right now, these guys are motivated. They got a life event that is happening. They have gotten a promotion. They're having babies. Their babies are going off to college, right? Something is happening to where they need to sell, they need to buy. These are the motivated. All right. So the fact that this has popped up this way, right? 25, 24, we got 23, we got 21, we got 22, right? When we're going through this, these are motivated sellers. There is a motivation driving for why they have this home listed. All right. This number is only going to increase as the seasonality starts to change. Your new listing data, guys, as we go through and we look at this as well, we're on the up. We're on the upward trend. We are this orange line right here. We're just peaking a little bit above these last couple of years. This is good news. People are fatigued. They're making the move. They are no longer going to wait for those 3% interest rates or that silver tsunami or whatever. What's also interesting is we look at this and we see a little bit of this dip. All right. So 2026, saying versus 2025, we're at 34%. What we do know is, historically speaking, 33%, 1/3 of all homes take a price decrease every year. Well, again, what does that look like? We talk about the principle of substitution. So if you haven't been in real estate school for very long, you probably forgot what this means. But what it means is your client is not going to buy the most expensive house on the block unless it's the best house. So apples for apples, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, same finishes, they're going to choose the cheaper one. So what happens? If I'm more expensive, I have two options. I can either add to my home and put in the better appliances and paint the house and new roof and do everything to increase the value to my current level, or I got to drop the price. Most people are choosing to drop the price. That's why we've seen this slight increase of price decreases. All right, is because the lesser of the pain points is to drop my price rather than to put money into my home to raise it to the price that I have it set at currently. Apples to apples, I will always choose the cheaper home. So we go through this is what we're looking at. Again, they're saying, hey, Trump in Switzerland. All right, so it says on the economic side of things, we're going to get PCE inflation report, which is what the Fed tracks. And it says this could be hotter than the CPI report. All right, so they're going to go through and they're going to see, is inflation getting higher? Now, again, Fed dual mandate. The Fed has a dual mandate, and what they're trying to do is this teeter-totter, and they are trying to make sure that inflation stays steady and job employment stays steady. What we understand is this is nearly impossible to do. What happens is if we're not selling a lot of widgets, what do people do? They got two options. They can either get out of their rental spaces, which they can't because they got contracts. So what can they do? They can fire people. So they fire people to raise their profit margins so that they can answer to their stockholders and make more money, because we live in a capitalist society. And so they fire people. And the government says, we can't have people getting fired. That's bad, right? Like when we talk about running for presidential elections and campaigns, Americans without jobs looks really, really bad. So when they go through and they look at this, they say, okay, well, that's un-American. We can't have people losing jobs. So let's make the money more free flowing. So what happens? People have more money. They spend more. The cost of widgets starts going up because people are competing against it. Remember 2021, $100,000 over asking price, waiving all contingencies. Here's the naming rights to my firstborn child. Like they were doing all this stuff. It's an impossible teeter-totter that they are on. So they have to decide what is the lesser of the evil. And typically it's letting inflation go up, because no one wants to see Americans hungry and on the streets. So inflation will go up. And guess what, guys? I'm all for it. Let the price of goods go up. Let's keep Americans employed and being able to feed their families. So as we're looking at this, is what they're going through. And he said, but maybe the most interesting news this week will be the political side. And he would keep an eye out on the bond market reaction to any news from the Fed. All right. So again, Trump is in Switzerland and he's going to say some stuff. And remember, whatever these guys say, I don't care if it's the current Fed president, Jerome Powell, or the current United States president, uh, Donald Trump, right? When these guys say stuff, it makes the bond markets move up or down. So if they say something positive, the bond market goes the right way. When they say something negative, the bond market goes the wrong way. And so we're going to go kind of through and we're going to see what this looks like. And also, they are going to really be looking at what the next Fed president is and what the mandates are going to be around this. Let's talk about mortgage rates, though. Guys, this is good. When we're looking at this, this is coming up until Friday, because remember, yesterday was a holiday, so the banks were closed, so there is no information from yesterday. So if we're looking at the across 30 days, right, we're looking from December over, we're looking at your conforming and your FHA. This is good data. As we're looking at this, we like to see it pretty flat, like looking down a little bit's pretty good. We do not want to see these big fluctuations up and down, up and down. We live in the United States of America. We do not live in a third world country. We should be able to say what our cost of money is going to cost us 30 days down the road, 60 days down the road. When we start seeing these fluctuations and these things that are happening, it scares people. It gives them uncertainty. People try to time the market. And as real estate agents, we know that timing the market is stupid. All right. You can't do it. There's no rhyme or reason. We just said that the president of the United States and the Fed president, they have a press conference and it impacts the market just by their words. All right. So if headlines alone fluctuate this market, there is no timing the market because you don't know what these people are going to say. You don't know what they're going to tweet. You don't know what they're going to put at the presser. You don't know any of these things. So when we start seeing these flatter lines, this is what gives your sellers confidence because we know the sellers become buyers. And if I sell my house, I want to know if my house sits for 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, I want to know what the cost of money is going to look like that far out because I don't want to sell my house and then interest rates go up to 7% and then I'm stuck buying a lesser home. It does not make sense. I might as well keep it and rent it if I can afford it at that point. This is good news. These are conversations worth having with our consumers. And we're just going to have to see what the Switzerland talks look like and see what happens with the rates going forward. But these are the conversations that we need to have, guys. It should excite everyone that year over year data. And we already know that this last year was higher than the year before. Purchase mortgage application data is on the rise, which are your consumers talking to lenders, figuring out what they qualify for. I'm telling you, everyone, that if you start positioning yourself as the expert on knowing how to make homes more affordable through concessions and through lender programs, people are going to come to you as their real estate economists, and you're going to have a great year in sales.